Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on workers' compensation and COVID-19. I'm Adam Rossi from the Communication and Outreach Unit here at the Workers' Compensation Board. And today we will be discussing the basics of the workers' compensation system, as well as information to help workers who believe they contracted COVID-19 on the job, especially those who have missed time from work or are suffering from ongoing or what we call long haul symptoms. I mentioned a few minutes ago, your phone line should be muted. We will be using the chat feature to receive your questions today. You can enter your questions at any point during the presentation in the chat box. There's a little chat icon on the bottom of your right-hand screen. You can just click on that and the box will pop right up. We will answer as many of your questions as we can, but if you have a question that we don't get to today, or if you think of something after the session ends, we will be providing you with resources at the end of the presentation. Also, I do want to mention, if you have a specific topic you'd like to discuss more deeply with the board, please feel free to share that topic along with your email address or a contact number in the chat box so that we can forward it on to the appropriate board staff and they can follow up with you. The chat settings are set so that only the panelists on this webinar today can see the questions or comments that come in. So no need to worry about any personal information being seen by others. It will only be seen by our panelists. Joining us today to assist with your questions, we have the board's medical director, Dr. James Tachi, general counsel Heather McMaster, as well as our advocate for injured workers, Joe Cavalcanti, who's going to say a few words to kick things off. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you very much, Adam, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm the advocate for injured workers here at the board, and my office exists to support the injured workers of New York State because we are here for you. In today's presentation, we're sharing important information about workers' compensation for employees who have contracted or who do contract COVID-19 due to an exposure in their workplaces. As part of this, we will be detailing how and when to file a claim. And the when here is very important, and it's one of the key reasons we're doing this webinar today, because you should be aware of the 2-year deadline to file a workers' compensation claim. You'll also learn what to include in your claim to show you had COVID and that your COVID-19 was work-related. So we're going to get started now. I'm turning this back over to Adam, and I look forward to answering your questions with my colleagues here after the formal presentation.
All right, thank you, Joe. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's take a look at today's agenda. We will start by explaining what workers' compensation is and what your rights are if you become injured or ill on the job. Then we'll discuss how workers' compensation can help those affected by work-related COVID-19, including workers who are facing ongoing or long-haul symptoms. We'll talk about the importance of filing a workers' compensation claim and then walk you through the process of doing so, including the medical documentation that's needed to support your COVID-19 claim. Finally, we will point you to some helpful resources for more information or assistance when filing. And again, we will leave time at the end to take your questions. So let's start with a brief overview of workers' compensation. Workers' compensation is a no-fault insurance system and is usually covered by insurance through an employer unless that employer is self-insured. And we will discuss this more a little later in the presentation. An employer cannot charge a worker for the cost of this insurance, and it provides medical care and lost wage benefits to workers who are injured or become ill on the job. An employee is considered anyone providing services to a for-profit business or any compensated individual providing services to a nonprofit organization, regardless of employer size. The only exceptions are clergy and some school teachers, although the vast majority of school teachers in New York State are voluntarily covered. There is no cost to the worker to receive the necessary medical treatment for a work-related injury or illness. This is a lifetime benefit unless a worker signs a settlement or what we call a Section 32 agreement that closes any medical eligibility for a payment. This includes all medical expenses, so tests, hospital visits, medications, physical therapy, equipment, and home care attendance. Transportation costs for travel to all medical appointments or treatments are also reimbursable for life, and there is no time limit to when a worker can file to have these costs reimbursed. Now let's discuss the workers' cash benefits, otherwise known as indemnity benefits. 2/3 of a worker's average weekly wage is payable while the worker is out on workers' compensation with 100% disability. This includes all compensation. So, for example, any tips you might receive, perks of the job, etc. The maximum benefit is $1,125.46 per week. And this is based on New York State's average payroll, and it is recalculated every July 1st. Benefits in the workers' compensation system are temporary, except in the event of a permanent injury. In that case, the worker will be evaluated to determine whether they have a permanent total disability or a permanent partial disability. Finally, there are payments for a loss of the use of a limb. This is known as a Schedule Loss of Use Award, and it may be eligible for injuries to the following: arm, your hand, your fingers, your leg, your foot, your toes, eyesight, hearing, or disfigurement. There's also a fatality benefit, which is payable in unfortunate instances where a worker perishes due to an incident, consequence of a previous incident, or an illness, such as COVID-19, while at work. With this benefit, funeral and memorial expenses are reimbursable up to $12,500 in the New York metro area and $10,500 throughout the rest of New York State. Surviving family members are also entitled to weekly benefits, which are calculated the same way as the indemnity benefits that we just mentioned, so 2/3 of the deceased worker's average weekly wage. Beneficiaries include the spouse of the worker, children up to the age of 18 or 23, as well as any disabled or blind dependents. If none of these parties exist, $50,000 is payable to the parents of the deceased worker. If there are no surviving family members, then $50,000 will be paid to the estate. In terms of who pays your workers' compensation claims, that depends. If your employer purchased an insurance policy, the insurance carrier who wrote that policy will pay the benefits. If your employer is self-insured for workers' compensation, your employer will then pay the claim. Usually, self-insured employers use what is called a claim administrator to handle their claims. So you would most likely be interacting with that claim administrator in a situation where you're working for a self-insured employer. That would be known as a third-party administrator or a TPA. When the employer does not have the required workers' compensation insurance coverage in place, then the Workers' Compensation Board will pay the claims so that the worker can get the needed benefits, and then the board will recoup that cost from the employer, along with any penalties for not having the insurance in the first place. Workers' compensation is a worker's legal right. If you are injured or become sick at work, you are entitled to workers' compensation. It cannot be negotiated or signed away. Also, immigration status is not a factor in determining workers' compensation eligibility. The board does offer free language assistance if you would like it, and you can find more information on that on our website at wcb.ny.gov. So, what is the role of the Workers' Compensation Board? The board administers and oversees the workers' compensation system. However, as previously mentioned, we do not typically pay the claims unless the employer has failed to provide the proper workers' compensation insurance. We have approximately 1,000 employees across 24 offices and hearing points statewide. Our role is to ensure the system operates correctly by receiving reports of all injuries, payments, medical reports, and any other documents relevant to the claim. We will also hold hearings in front of an administrative law judge when appropriate to adjudicate or move a claim forward. So hopefully that gives you a high-level understanding of the workers' compensation system, your rights and your benefits if you become injured or ill on the job, as well as the role of all of us here at the Workers' Compensation Board. Now let's discuss what you need to know and what actions you should take if you contract COVID-19 at your workplace. The very first thing to do when you are sick or injured on the job is to seek treatment. In an emergency, you can see any healthcare provider, but otherwise, please go to a provider who is authorized to treat injured workers by the Workers' Compensation Board. You can find one using the provider search on our website. Again, that link is wcb.ny.gov. You can also visit your local New York State occupational health clinic for treatment from an authorized provider. You can search for your closest clinic on the Department of Health website, and you'll see that link right there on the slide if you want to jot that down. Tell the provider who treats you that you believe you contracted COVID-19 from an exposure at work. Share any details about your workplace to back that up. So for example, how would you describe your workplace? Was there public contact? Were masks being worn? Did any of your coworkers have COVID-19? Things like that, as well as any other circumstances the provider should know about for your potential exposure. If your healthcare provider agrees, they will send a medical report to the insurer and to the board. It is best if the medical report includes a positive COVID-19 test result, but a medical report showing a diagnosis via a PCR test or by virtue of an examination may also be used. You will need to notify your employer in writing that you believe you contracted COVID-19 at work. We highly suggest that you either use an email or a written document. A text message can be accepted, but we do not recommend that just because it's not always the easiest thing to find a duplicate or find a text and duplicate it if necessary. So we strongly would like you to send an email or do a written document. Notify your employer as soon as you can. However, it should be no later than 30 days of you becoming ill. Your employer is then required to notify its workers' compensation insurance carrier. Now let's take a look at how to file a COVID-19 workers' compensation claim. You should file a claim for workers' compensation, number one. Workers are not required to file a claim because the insurance payer must notify the board of the incident. However, filing your own claim is a valuable protection and is extremely helpful, as I will explain in a few minutes. You have 2 years from the time you contracted COVID-19 to file your claim. So if you are approaching this deadline, please do file a claim as soon as possible. The fastest way to file is using the employee claim form, which is known as Form C3. You can find that online on the link there on your screen. You can visit the COVID-19 area of our website and just file, and you can either file a paper form or you can do it electronically. And if you want to file a paper form, you can also download it from the website at that link. Again, that's on your screen right there. Just follow the instructions on the form for submitting it to the board. We would like to note that the Form C3 is what you fill out for any injury or illness experienced on the job. It is not specific to COVID-19. If you have questions while you're filling it out, do not hesitate to contact us. If you have a PCR test showing that you had COVID-19, file that report. That will be very important to your claim. If you had COVID-19 early in the pandemic and you got your results by phone, as I'm sure many people did, you should now get that result in writing and file that. So what do you need to share in your claim to show your COVID-19 illness was work-related? Most workers cannot point to the exact moment or method of exposure to COVID-19. However, you can demonstrate a high risk in your workplace if you work in an environment where exposure to COVID-19 is or was prevalent. For example, a hospital or a transportation job, a grocery store, or anywhere else. On the claim form, include details about where you work, how often you work, and your job duties, especially those involving public contact. Section D of the claim form has a space for you to share any relevant details. Now, we do want to note, while not all claims will be accepted, there is no harm or risk in filing a claim, even if it ends up getting denied. Filing a claim is important for anyone who believes they contracted COVID-19 at the job, especially those who are missing work or experiencing ongoing symptoms, as there may be benefits that can help you right away. If you are experiencing long-haul medical issues due to work-related COVID-19, you may be eligible for free lifetime medical care. If you miss more than 7 days of work due to work-related COVID-19, you may be eligible to receive lost wage benefits. This may be very helpful to long-haul sufferers who regularly miss time from work due to medical appointments or to worsening symptoms. For anyone who contracted COVID-19 on the job, whether or not you had access to and used paid sick time, and whether or not since you've recovered, it is important to have an established claim, a record that your COVID-19 was work-related, should you suffer long-haul complications and need workers' compensation benefits down the line. If you already have an established claim for COVID-19, any lost wage benefits or ongoing medical care that is directly or consequently related to COVID-19 falls under that existing claim. So, for example, someone with an established COVID-19 claim may also need ongoing treatment for problems from COVID-19 related to their kidneys or lungs, or they may develop consequential conditions such as anxiety or depression. If the treating provider thinks that a new condition is related to the work-related COVID-19, it should be sent to the workers' comp insurer, who will either accept the provider's medical opinion or seek resolution as to whether it is related by the board. Also, again, you should see a board-authorized provider. When seeing the provider, please make sure you have the following information: your WCB claim number, the carrier case number, and the name of the insurer. If you need help filing a claim, you can call our toll-free customer support line at 877-632-4996. Free language assistance is also available. If you face resistance or obstacles to getting information about the claims process, or if you're discouraged from filing a claim, please let us know. We will help you. Email our Advocate for Injured Workers at advocateforinjuredworkers@wcb.ny.gov. So what happens once you file? If the insurer accepts or agrees with the claim, it will be payable. This is known as compensable. If the insurer disputes the claim, a judge at the board will decide whether the claim should be paid. Right now, everyone has to attend our hearings remotely because our offices are closed to the public. While the attorney must attend by video, injured workers do have the choice to either participate by telephone or by video through the virtual hearing center. Your hearing notice will contain all the details. The judge may hear testimony to get the facts about where you work, whether you were exposed to COVID-19, the extent of the exposure, and whether exposure to COVID-19 was prevalent in your work environment. Remember, you do not need to pinpoint a moment in time when you think you were exposed. We will review all the facts of the claim. And from there, it is possible to appeal a judge's decision if we do have an appeal process if that happens. If you file a claim within 2 years of contracting COVID-19, but your claim was incomplete, you will need the following: a positive PCR test result and possibly a medical report, any other documentation the board has requested or directed at a hearing, and please submit this information as soon as possible. Once all materials are submitted to your board file, your attorney can request a hearing. If you do not have an attorney, you may file a request for assistance by an injured worker, which is Form RFA-1W, or use its online version, and both are available on the form section at wcb.ny.gov. So now we'll take a look at the additional resources that we have available for you. For more information related to COVID-19, including quick links for finding an authorized workers' compensation provider and filing a claim, please visit wcb.ny.gov/COVID-19. On that page, you'll also find numerous resources such as fact sheets, frequently asked questions, and more. You can also subscribe for email updates related to COVID-19 and workers' compensation by selecting the Subscribe for Updates button on the top of the page. For other helpful information for workers on workers' compensation and other topics, you can visit the Workers page on the board's website at wcb.ny.gov. Finally, as I mentioned, our advocate for injured workers is at the ready to help injured workers who are having difficulties with their claims or trouble accessing their benefits. You can contact the advocate's office by calling 877-632-4996, or you can email the Advocate for Injured Workers email at advocateforinjuredworkers@wcb.ny.gov. We have a very active social media presence to help you stay informed on workers' compensation topics and for the latest news from the board. Follow us on our social media channels to learn about future webinars such as this one, as well as information and webinars on New York State paid family leave. Our X, which is formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube handles are on the screen. I highly recommend the YouTube page as we have all of our webinars recordings on that page, including this one. We will be updating it to include the most recent version. So again, definitely check out that YouTube page for any information you may need a refresher on or would like to know about. So thank you for attending this presentation on COVID-19 and workers' compensation. We hope you found this information helpful, and we are now going to take the rest of the time to answer any questions you have. Again, any questions, just type them right into the chat box on the right side of your screen. We do have our experts on hand to answer anything. And again, I do want to mention, we are going to be providing you with a copy of this slide deck as well as the recorded presentation, which will be on our YouTube page. And I had mentioned earlier, if there's anything you'd like to discuss more deeply with us and you want us to contact you, please leave us your email address or a contact number and we can have someone reach out to you then. But with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Dr. Tachi, Joe, and Heather, and they will answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Adam. And hello again. This is Joe, the advocate, and we have received 2 different questions so far. So this is your chance. If you do have a question, go ahead and put it in that chat box, lower right-hand side of your screen. The 2 questions we've received, I'm going to speak to them one at a time now because in both instances, This public presentation might not be the best forum to answer those questions. The first question has to do with situations inside a mall, we believe. And so we would like to encourage the person who's posing the questions about the mall. Please take a moment to compile your thoughts, and then you can contact my office directly, either at that telephone number on screen, at the bottom of the screen in green, or you can send us an email. But we really do think that your question and any pertinent details are going to best be posed in that manner. The second question we've received is from a worker who is talking about having COVID 2, possibly 3 years ago. We're uncertain of the circumstances. So, to this person as well, if you already have a claim, please contact my office, either in writing, by email, or by the phone. Have your WCB case number, and we will look your claim up, and we will fully consider any questions you have, and maybe you need some help with the claim. That's no problem at all. If you don't have a claim, give us the call, give us the email, give us the details and the circumstances, please, and then we can fully consider your question there, because I think your question needs a little more time than we can really reasonably provide right now. However, since I've begun talking, we have had several questions come in. So I'd like to encourage everyone else, please, if you have a question that's not been covered, go on ahead and put it in there. We're just going to take a moment now to review what's come in, and then we'll have some answers for you.
So we have a couple of questions here that are really about COVID paid sick leave, which is different from workers' compensation, and it's administered by the Department of Labor. Depending on the size of the employer, an employee may be eligible for 5 to up to, I believe, 14 days of paid sick leave. If the employee contracted COVID at work, they may also file, and the employer should report the COVID claim for workers' compensation purposes. You don't need to worry about which benefit you're eligible for. You're eligible for both. And that basically the employer's workers' compensation carrier will sort out with the employer as to whether there's reimbursement due for any COVID paid sick leave you may have taken. There's another question here that Joe was going to respond to, sort of related.
Yes, so Heather's addressing the paid sick leave portion, but let's say we have a worker who's had COVID again and who is wondering about reimbursement of sick days from a workers' comp perspective. Okay, so this pertains to everyone who has a COVID claim that is established under workers' comp now. Okay, let's say you're out of work long enough that you're getting an indemnity benefit, you've exceeded the paid sick leave time, all the other programs that are available. If you are out of work and you get your benefit, you ought to be able to have restored the sick time that you took so that you had the money coming in. Okay, so sometimes people are suffering a work-related injury or illness, they're out of work, they're using sick time to supplement the 2/3 that they're getting in workers' comp. So yes, once your claim is established, you should be able to have the excess time, or the workers' comp time, sorry. You should be able to have the time that workers' comp paid restored into your sick bank if you had originally used sick time. Hope that's clear. Let's see, what else do we have?
I'll jump in. This is Dr. Tachi, and we have a question that states, from a provider perspective, is a PCR test required for submitting a claim? And the answer is that, as was mentioned, the PCR test is considered the gold standard with respect to filing a claim, because it is typically provider administered. It is individual specific, so that the test is performed on a named patient, and it is also a date and time stamped. So it gives everything that we want in a workers' comp claim. It's administered by a provider. It has the patient or the claimant's name affixed to it, and it gives a date and time for when the test was done and the results were provided. So the PCR from a provider standpoint, when you're seeing a patient with COVID, and potentially work-related COVID, is certainly the gold standard. There may be instances where circumstances prevent an individual from obtaining a PCR test, and all they have is an antigen test. We certainly wouldn't want to discourage people from filing a claim for COVID if they believe that the COVID is work-related, but understand that the PCR is the gold standard, and the antigen test doesn't have any of those components to it. Typically, it's not provider administered, it's not patient specific, and it's not date and time stamped.
So we have a question here from someone who is working from home but contracted COVID, and whether or not they can file a workers' compensation claim if they believe they contracted COVID at work. Really, this is a very fact-specific question, and it's going to depend on a lot of things. I don't believe there's specifically case law on this topic at this time, but if you are working and you contracted COVID while you're working and it's related to your work, then the claim would be compensable. If you are working at home and you contracted COVID for some purely personal reason because you have a sick child, or then I would imagine that the compensation carrier is going to deny that claim on that basis. But there's nothing to prevent, simply by the fact that you are working at home, from you filing a claim for work-related COVID exposure. There's another question from someone who's had multiple cases of COVID at work and asking whether or not they should file a single claim or a claim for each illness. And you should file a claim for every time that you got COVID at work. They're separate and distinct accidents under the workers' compensation law.
Adam, we have a question here about someone who's wondering how to get the slide presentation. Would you be so kind as to tell us again?
Absolutely. We will be emailing you when the slide deck and the recording are available. However, we will also be posting it on our website. If you go to that COVID-19 link on your slide, you should be able to see a previous slide deck and recording posted on there. And then also, if you go to our YouTube page, we also have all our recordings on there, so check that out as well.
Thank you. We just had a question come in regarding dates. We all know that the pandemic began in New York in 2020. Actually, February 29, 2020 was the first case in New York. So now, let's say someone had COVID in March or April of 2020. Well, the existing workers' comp law says that workers have 2 years from the date of incident to file a workers' comp claim. So, April 1st, 2020, April 1st, 2022 would have been approximately the last date to file that claim. So it's the 2-year window of time that we are referring to as the length of time that a worker has to file a claim. And this is the workers' comp law in New York State. Okay, this is not specific to COVID. This is just the general law that our system operates under. All right, this question is about the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC. So just as a general rule, you may file a workers' comp claim. You may contact the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Sure, that's fine. They're not mutually exclusive. We do have different jurisdictions, but if you have something that falls under both of our jurisdictions, go on ahead and contact both of us. But please, for our part, if you have an incident that you believe injured or made you ill at work, please file that claim. Please tell your employer, about the incident so that the employer can do its duty and tell its insurer, and then the insurer tells us, and the claim has been started.
There's a question in the chat. It's a pretty brief one that says, in regards to testing, would a home test with affirmation be acceptable? And I'm assuming that it means that the individual conducted a home test and then their treating provider gave the opinion that they thought the COVID was work-related. As we mentioned before, the gold standard, of course, is a PCR test administered by a health provider, unique to the patient and ill worker, name linked to them, and date and time stamped for the testing. If circumstances prevent an individual from being PCR tested for some reason, and all they have is a home test, and their provider believes that their COVID is work-related, then certainly that can be submitted as a claim. But again, the PCR test is really the preferred testing.
All right. Remember I was speaking a moment ago about deadlines and timeframes? Well, someone has a specific question that I would like to answer specifically. The person says, what about long COVID from that time or 2020? Okay, the rule in the workers' comp system is the 2-year time to file a claim I was discussing. It begins from incident date. So if someone contracted COVID approximately April 1st of 2020, and even if the person is today still suffering from the effects of that illness, the claim would have had to have been filed by 2 years from April 1st, 2020. I'm sorry, but there are some certain timeframes in our system, and this would be one of them.
All right, thank you, Joe. That seems to be all the questions we have, so we are going to go ahead and wrap up. But before we do, I just want to remind you that there is more information related to COVID-19, including quick links to finding an authorized workers' compensation provider and filing a claim, which you can find at that link on the slide here, wcb.ny.gov/COVID-19. Again, you can also subscribe for email updates relating to anything COVID-19 and workers' compensation by selecting the subscribe for updates button at the top of that page. To receive any other workers' compensation news, including information on future webinars, please visit wcb.ny.gov, which is our homepage. Scroll down to the bottom of that page and select Get WCB Notifications, and you can choose the topics you'd like to subscribe to. For other helpful information for workers, please visit our workers page of our website. Again, the homepage is wcb.ny.gov, and then we have a special workers section that you can find information on. Again, a recorded version of this presentation will be posted on our website and on our YouTube page, but if you would like to review a previously recorded webinar which has all of this information, feel free to do so. Our YouTube handle is @NYSWCB, and also don't forget to follow us on Facebook, X, and Instagram. Lastly, when you sign off today, you will be directed to take a quick survey. Please take the time to fill that out. Take you no less than 2 minutes. We just want to make sure we're doing a good job giving you the information we can. And if you have any suggestions or comments for us, please feel free to shoot them to us so we know how to improve these as we go forward. Again, thank you for joining us today, and please enjoy the rest of your afternoon.